Today I'd like to welcome Rachel Goldman, CEO of Paramount Gold Nevada. Thanks for coming on Play Stocks.
Well, thanks for having me, Ron. It's great to see you again.
Yes, I guess just since the first time you're on here, maybe a bit of background about yourself and how you got involved in Paramount.
Yeah, sure thing. So I actually spent about 20 years working in capital markets in Canada, mostly for a number of institutionally focused brokerage firms working on their sales desk. So I don't have a technical background, but I do have a lot of experience in different aspects of finance and capital markets and helping smaller companies certainly interact with a broader audience when possible. And I was at a career inflection, shall we say, and was connected with Rudy Frank through a common friend and colleague of both of ours. And he planted the seed, approached me with the idea of joining Paramount as CEO. I guess seeing that, we're a very small team and everybody wears a number of hats and runs flat out. But in terms of being able to spend, a considerable amount of time, both on strategic type decisions and ideas, and also in terms of marketing the company, that was the plan for me. The wrinkle in our plan, certainly as the same wrinkle in many people's plans, was that COVID hit literally the month that I started at Paramount. So that meant the first 2 years I was sitting in my basement, not dissimilar from what I'm doing right now in terms of, trying to connect with people via different webinars or, other modes of non-in-person communication.
Okay, no, sounds great. Guess you just had news that you got the plan of operation approved for Grassy, and next, I guess, is environmental impact. Any idea of the timeline there?
That's always the slippery slope question, isn't it? It'll be interesting to see how long that process takes. We don't manage that process. So the BLM has hired HDR, which is a consulting firm, which is very familiar already with Grassy. They've had substantial opportunities to help the BLM review different aspects of our submissions. Different BLM offices will have different levels of in-house technical expertise. And the BLM in Oregon probably doesn't have the same level of expertise as, say, some of their neighbors in Nevada or elsewhere. So I think, the HDR's involvement up to this point has been substantial for them. Our permitting consultants have suggested they think it could take about a year to complete, but we really don't know. And in fact, at some point we will get, I think, better insight from HDR and the BLM. But again, it's a process that's not unique to Paramount or to Grassy, but is one that we see throughout the U.S. anytime that the federal permitting involves a BLM input.
Yeah, with government, there's never any set timeline.
That's right. Especially, I guess, when you have, changes in government too. We have yet to see how that plays out.
Right. Yeah, I like Grassy. It's high grade, and the feasibility that you last did was what, 136 million capex. Do you see that going up with, there's rising costs that everyone's concerned about these days?
Well, interestingly, that feasibility is actually a brand new one as of this fall. So I would say, if anything, there's good potential that over the next couple of years, as we head to a construction decision, that we could actually see some of those input costs come down. Again, the inflationary environment that we're in is pretty unusual, and how this plays out is anybody's best guess. But, what we're very pleased about is the original feasibility study we put out was in February 2020, in September of 2020. And so, you might ask, well, why are we doing another one just 2 years later? And this has actually everything to do with us being a US listed company. And there's some new SEC regulations for US listed companies in terms of putting out a report that meets their standards. Hence, that's what this latest study was. And I would say, all in, after 2 years of really, exceptional inflation, the fact that we still have a very robust rate of return and payback period, even under those conditions, is quite encouraging for us.
Okay, good. I know it's a year more away, but any thought to how you're gonna finance this when it comes that time?
Yeah, well, ultimately, I would say that once we get over the permitting hurdle, i.e., the state level permitting for Grassy, because that's really the big unknown from the market standpoint. In the past 2.5 years, I've had many opportunities to engage with different potential financing partners on debt, equity, royalties, etc. And I think because it's a small sized project, all things considered, it's in a favorable jurisdiction, being the US, or at least there's better comfort level with rule of law and things of that nature. I feel pretty confident that we'd be able to look at something close to a 60-40 debt equity ratio to finance this. But certainly, we'll have much better indications once we get further kind of market visibility on our permitting progress at the state level, because that's when those discussions, start to become more serious.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like the gold market could improve by then, and so it's out of ways. But also your Frost project is nearby, and you had some good drill results. What is the plan with that going forward?
So Frost, just as a refresher, that was something that was originally drilled back in, I think it was the 90s by Western Mining, and they had hit some very high grades there. And as you mentioned at the outset, Grassy's already pretty high grade, about 6.5 grams. However, there was some historic showings at Frost close to 25 grams per ton. And because the project is only about a 12-mile drive away from Grassy, the thinking would be, if anything material is discovered at Frost, we could truck it to a common processing site at Grassy, which would certainly help the economics, extend the mine life, etc. And so you're right, we did put in some initial holes. We're flying a little bit blind. We've had the benefit of shooting geophysics. We understand, or geologists, I'll say I understand because they've told me, the anomalies between Grassy, which is a volcanic center, and signatures that we see at Frost as well. So based on all of that magic, they went in and drilled some initial holes. And what I'd say is, we don't have a discovery yet, but we certainly have enough there that would inform a future drill program. I would say that from a capital allocation standpoint, until we get better visibility that the market can sink their teeth into about permitting at Grassy, I think that we would probably hold off on future drilling at Frost for the time being. We do have opportunities in Nevada if we have excess capital kicking around, which generally isn't the case for small companies these days. It's been a difficult market from a capital standpoint. But I'd say that as a company, especially a company our size, we're certainly opportunity rich in terms of the assets that we have.
Yeah, and another one of those is Sleeper that I've followed and known for a long time. I know it's low grade, but what kind of gold price do you think you would need to start getting, I guess, more active on that project?
Well, we actually did put in so we started some development work at Sleeper last year in 2021. And similarly, you're right, it is currently very low grade. However, these are grades that are actually mineable in Nevada right now. You can see some low grade operations that are making it work in $1,700-$1,800 gold environment. It's not impossible. But from our standpoint, when we'd put in a little bit of drilling there, it was partially to test a thesis about, one of the faults, a range front fault that exists near the historic pit, and a thesis about, there being some potential for higher grade mineralization to the east of that. And in fact, Glenn did hit, in excess of 1 gram a ton there. So already there too, there's the first kernels of certainly a big opportunity set on a very large land package. This is 40,000 acres. the bulk of the drilling that's ever been done there, which there was a substantial amount of drilling, all centered, not surprisingly, in and around the old pit because it was such a high grade hit that they were mining from there. So, you know, there's a lot of potential that needs to be explored still at Sleeper. Our first order of business, frankly, though, is we're in the process now of basically updating the resource. And this is a substantial amount of work because the historic resource was built off of a lot of data, which in some cases wasn't digitized because it was prior to that being the norm. And so, you know, we're in a sense, we're rebuilding that database first. We put out the first phase of that updated resource, and we will look to continue to finish that digitization of the database and generate an MNI resource as well, and then see where that takes us, and given what else is going on in the world. So it would be difficult for me to give you a gold price at which Sleeper would work in this environment, simply because we don't have all the other inputs yet.
Okay, no, fair enough. Your latest news, you got a drill permit for the Bald Peak project?
That's right.
I haven't looked a lot at that. What's the, I guess, key points or main interest in that?
Sure. So what it attracted us, and again, the geologist team to Bald Peak, were a few things. So this is based in Mineral County, Nevada. So again, good jurisdiction. It is sitting on a parallel structure to the structure that hosts Bodie, Aurora, and Borealis. So these were all good open pit producers in their day. And Bald Peak was sitting in an area where the prior operator had an existing plan of operations with the US Forest Service, but they'd never actually drilled it. But what was intriguing to us about that when we went and did the due diligence was they could very clearly see a mineralized structure. We took a number of surface samples after we auctioned the property, and we shot geophysics, and everything seems to line up very nicely, pointing to some, you know, potential for shallow and good grades. And so the next phase obviously was to essentially renew or get an exemption extension, if you will, on the existing plan of operations, which is a shorter time period than if we were to start fresh and getting a brand new drill permit. So that was what we were just granted. We are in an area where we have to respect the bird mating season and so on. So that may dictate a little bit when we'll be able to put in a drill program. But based on the way this drill permit is written, if we schedule things properly, we should be able to get 2 shorter drill cycles out of it. One starting, I would say, in the fall of 23, and then the next one, again, working off of whatever data that we get out of that first program, we'd be looking at something in the summer of 2024.
Okay, no, look forward to seeing that. There's something new. Yeah, so you got a lot of projects. I guess the difficult question, maybe, I'm sure you get it a lot, is, you know, the low share valuation. I guess it's affecting a lot of companies, but what do you kind of attribute most of that to, in your opinion?
So it's something that, you're right, the entire industry has wrestled with over the past couple of years. And I think 2022 in particular was a surprise to many that the sector has been so weak. I think there were expectations that with all of the macro and events going on, that gold would do better. I mean, the price of gold has actually done well. It's the stocks that haven't done as well. And, you know, and I think that gets into just investor appetite being drawn away to other maybe flashier parts of the market. And, you know, I think also just some concerns overall about how companies are going to advance in this inflationary environment where capital is more scarce. And so I think we're all in the same boat from that perspective. I think where Paramount has perhaps suffered a little bit more is really because of the permitting unknown in Oregon, which is completely understandable. It's much easier for the market to dismiss something that's never happened before as saying it can't ever happen. But for this company, having spent the last 6 years of its life really focused on the the nitty gritty of permitting in the state. And, you know, we have had a lot of progress there. It's somewhat imperceptible from the market standpoint. So on the one hand, you know, this is why I believe this is why we're trading as at such a low valuation. And last I checked, we're at about $5 per ounce in the ground. You know, considering how much companies spend on exploration, how difficult it is to replace reserves and production, you know, at some point, a permitted project in the US is going to look pretty attractive. And so, you know, although it is the single biggest overhang right now, the uncertainty around the permitting timeline visibility in Oregon, we also see it as a tremendous opportunity for us to create value. We just have to be patient.
Yeah, no, I understand. It looks like things maybe have bottomed, and you know, I see a bit of life coming to a number of juniors in gold stocks. So you know, let's hope the next up cycle has begun. And yeah, anything else you'd like to comment on that I might have missed?
I think we've done a pretty good job there. I mean, so yeah, certainly what you'll be looking out for from us is, again, news on the Oregon permitting front. There's something that's it's a different regime than permitting regimes that people are more familiar with, but the next catalyst for us in that sense is going to be something called the notice to proceed, which we're waiting for from the state agencies. This basically means that they have spent the past year evaluating all the aspects of our updated application, and they are acknowledging that they have all the information there they need to start drafting permits. And so, you know, that's where it's a bit different from other jurisdictions. But once they give us this notice to proceed, they essentially are starting a 225-day clock on themselves to write these draft permits and complete the environmental assessment. And so, you know, that'll be a really critical catalyst for the company, because that'll move us into a stage that no company has ever gotten to before in the state. And just as a reminder, the state of Oregon hasn't ever turned down a mine. They've literally just never had to assess one before. So we are the first ones. We're breaking ground there, so to speak.
Okay, no, that's pretty exciting to accomplish all that. So I just want to, for investors, the symbol for Paramount is PZG on New York.
That's right.
Check that out, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos. So great having you on, Rachel, and look forward to doing it again someday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron. Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you.
Okay.
Goodbye then.
Bye-bye.